Let's review solving equations. The first thing I want you to remember is about Pemdas, the order of operations. Turns out when you solve equations, we go in reverse. And so that means that you're going to do any addition and subtraction first, then do your multiplication and division. And we won't need to worry about exponents in parentheses because we're just doing linear equations, they call them. So if I were looking at this first one and I wanted to get x by itself, it's currently being divided by 7. I like to write a line down that equal side because we want to consider that this has two sides to this equation. And we want to get rid of a divided by 7. And to get rid of a divided by 7, we will do the opposite, multiply by 7. What's important though is that you multiply by 7 on both sides of the equal sign. Anytime you're doing something to one side, you do it to the other side, and that's why that line is helpful. So we've got a divided by 7 and a times 7, which cancels out. We got x by itself, and 8 times 7 is 56. This next one should also be a one-step. We want to get x by itself. Currently x has a 7 subtracted from it. We want to do something to both sides to make that 7 go away. The opposite of subtracting 7 is adding 7. So on both sides we will add 7. And that leaves us with negative 7 plus 7 is 0, so just x plus 0. And on this side we get 26, 19 plus 7. We're going to move on to some two-steppers now, and that's where that order of operations comes in handy. We're going to do adding and subtracting, followed by multiplication and division. So I want to get this x by itself, get our line in there. I want to get rid of the 8 and the 3, and I should take care of the adding and subtracting first. So I want to get rid of that minus 3. The opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3. Whatever I do to one side of that equal sign, I do to the other side. Subtracting 3 and adding 3 makes 0. I just have an 8x left over here. And 13 plus 3 is 16. Keep that equal sign in the middle. Now we can move on to our multiplying and dividing. Right now the x is not by itself. It has an 8 that's multiplied by it. That stands for multiplication. To get rid of a multiplied by 8, we will divide both sides by 8. Both sides of the equation. 8 divided by 8 is just 1. So all we have is 1x left over here and 2 left over here. This next one is another two-step. I want to get that x by itself. I'm going to save the 4 for last because do you see how that 4 is multiplied by the x? I want to take care of any adding or subtracting first. Now, if I look at this 9, is this 9 positive or negative? That's a positive 9. And how can you cancel out a positive 9 with adding and subtracting? The answer is you can subtract 9 off of it. What happens when we subtract 9 on both sides? Well, negative 9 minus 9 is negative 18. Use a calculator if you need to. 9 minus 9 is 0, and that leaves me with this minus 4x left over here still. Great, so the 9 is gone. Now I need to get rid of that negative 4. It seems tricky. Some people are tempted to do like a plus 4, but remember that minus 4 is multiplied by x. A minus 4x means negative 4 times x. So to get rid of a times negative 4, we want to divide by negative 4 on both sides. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1, so just 1x over there. Negative 18 divided by 4, well, it doesn't come out even, but that's okay. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and we get 4.5. Decimals are just fine. Decimals are numbers too. I think it'll help you just to see a lot of examples here. Let's do another one. I think that line down the equal sign is going to help you. We want to get the x by itself, taking care of any adding or subtracting first. I see a plus 2, so I'm going to minus 2. That leaves me with 3/5 x equals 6. Now some people handle this next step differently, but that's 3/5 times x. So if you were following the same rules, what we'd be doing is we'd be dividing by 3/5 on both sides to make that go away. You will see some people who, instead of dividing by 3/5, they multiply by the reciprocal on both sides. That's another nice way to do this one, because 5/3 times 3/5 makes 15/15, which is just 1. And so it has the same effect. No matter which way you do it, in the green or in the blue, we should come out with the x being all by itself. And feeling free to use a calculator, you can type in 6 divided by 3/5 or 6 times 5/3, and either way you should get 10. Remember that you can always plug those numbers back into the original equation and take 3/5 of 10 plus 2, and it should equal 8. Next one's a little more tricky because it has x's on both sides of that equals sign. So what we want to do is we'd like to get all of the x's together. If you want to get x by itself, they have to join forces first. So most people, remember starting with adding and subtracting, would subtract 2x from both sides. That's going to combine your x's together. 8x's minus 2x's makes 6x's. And 2x minus 2x is nothing, leaves me with a minus 13. And now it's kind of just like the previous problems where we have to get that x by itself, do our adding and subtracting first. The opposite of plus 5 is minus 5. Remember that there's an equal sign on that line every time. And that makes negative 18 altogether. Finally, we can get rid of the 6 times x, get rid of that 6 by dividing by 6. And I'll have x equals negative 3. I want to make sure you see the difference between these two problems. Do you see how this one has x's on both sides? And this one, the x's are on the same side. We handle those differently. Just like on the previous problem, when the x's are on different sides, we want to join them together. And whatever we do to one side of the equation, we do to the other side of the equation. That's why that line helps me keep organized, because I would never want to add an x twice to one side. Whatever I do to one side, I do to both sides. A minus x and a plus x makes 0, so then the 6 is by itself. 5x's plus another x makes 6x. You could think of that as plus 1x. And we've got our plus 4. Next, we will want to get that x by itself. I think subtracting 4 would be the right move from both sides of the equation. Keep that equal sign on the line. And we just have our 6x left over here. Some people are tempted to say, oh, 6 divided by 2 is 3. We're done. Remember, we want to get the x by itself. The x is being multiplied by 6. To get rid of multiplied by 6, we divide by 6 on both sides. 6 divided by 6 is just 1x. 2 divided by 6, I guess 2/6, or 1/3. Fractions are numbers too. All right, this one. I see a lot of people who, when they see the 7x and the minus 2x, they do an illegal move where they go plus 2x plus 2x. Are you guilty of that? The thing that's wrong with that is that we're not doing it to both sides of the equals sign. That's why I like to make that line there. We don't do a plus 2x and a plus 2x because these are already on the same side. We can actually just do combining like terms. 7x's minus 2x's is 5x's. Same thing with the 3 and the 6. We don't need to subtract 3, no, we're just going to combine. What's a plus 3 plus 6? Together that makes a plus 9. So again, if everything was already on the same side, there's no need to use both sides. We are just combining like terms at that point. Next, we want to get that x by itself, starting with the adding or subtracting. That equals stays on the line. I've got 10 over here. And finally, that is 5 times x. So I can divide both sides by 5 to get the x all alone. 5 divided by 5 is 1. X is equal to 2. These next two have an extra set of parentheses in here, and I kind of told you that we wouldn't have to deal with parentheses. But really, this is just going to tell us that we should distribute. So why don't we just start this by going 8 times x minus 8 times 1, and just rewrite it like that. Then we don't have to worry about parentheses. Now we've got our line down the middle, right? Question, I've got an 8x and a 7x. Should I be subtracting 7x from both sides, or should I be combining like terms? And the answer is, we would only subtract 7x from both sides of the equation, and that's not really what we want to do. When those guys are already on the same side, we can just combine them together. They call that combining like terms. An 8x plus a 7x makes 15x altogether. We still have a minus 8 equals 7. The equal stays on the line. Don't forget that equals, because then you'll forget what you're trying to do. We're trying to get the x by itself on one side. Next, we're going to add the 8. And it makes sense to do that to both sides. Now I've got 15x plus nothing equals 15. Okay, keep track of what's happening. We want to get this x by itself. Right now we have a 15 times x. How do you get rid of a times 15? You divide by 15. 15 divided by 15 equals 1, so 1x equals, and here we have 1 on the other side as well. X equals 1. One more big killer problem. Again, we've got parentheses. I promised you no parentheses, so let's distribute the 3. 3 times x minus 3 times 4. What's with this negative here? So it turns out that we distribute that. You could even, if that bugs you, think of that as a negative 1 out front. We're going to take that negative 1 and distribute that. So a negative times a 2x, or a negative 1 times a 2x makes that a negative 2x. And then the negative 1 times minus 1 makes that a plus 1. Little tricky. Then we've got this plus 2 that just kind of drops down. All right. I'm thinking we should combine some like terms over here. There's a lot going on, right? We could combine a plus 1 and a plus 2, couldn't we? They're on the same side, so we don't need to do anything to both sides yet. We can just combine over there. A plus 1 and a plus 2 makes a plus 3. Now's where we want to start doing things to both sides of the equation, because we've got x's all over the place. We want the x's to be on the same side. Most of you would probably want to move this x over to the other side. To cancel out a negative 2x, we're going to add a 2x to both sides, of course. Looks like I have 5 x's now on this side. And I have 0 x's on this side and a positive 3. Beautiful. Now we're down to just kind of a two-step equation. I want to get that x by itself. I'm going to do my adding and subtracting first. I am going on both sides this time. I've got 5x plus 0 equals 15. Last step, that 5 times x. We'll divide by 5 to make the times 5 go away. 5 divided by 5 is just 1, so I've got 1x equals 3. I hope that helps. Please ask questions if you're still feeling stuck.